Good morning, everyone. Welcome to October. Welcome to Ask Anything with DeAnna Batdorf. She is here with me today. And if you haven't been following along and watching, DeAnna is an Ayurvedic practitioner, a lymphatic specialist, an elemental health educator, general community advocate, and all-around great person. And she is here today to answer questions that you've submitted and that you can submit here in the chat. Today's kind of a special day. October, as you may know, is Breast Care Awareness Month. And one of DeAnna's main focuses in this world is breast health. In fact, she has seen tens of thousands of individuals in her practice specifically about breast care and lymphatic health as it pertains to the breast tissue. And we're not just talking about one particular gender or one type of body, because all humans have breast tissue. So this really pertains to everyone. And it's a big topic in the world. And it's something that affects us all for sure. So here today, she's going to tell you a little bit about some of the best ways to get good breast care. And I'll be adding links in the description for anything that she's talking about. Also, before I leave it over to DeAnna, I want to let you know that for this entire month, we are offering our breast care self-care kit at 20% off on the DeAnna Essentials website. This kit has everything you need, everything she's going to describe today, everything you need to set up a regular practice to really take good care of your lymph health and your breast tissue health. And it's got a gorgeous hardwood hand-carved gua sha, which is truly the only thing you ever need in this world. And some of our breast cream and some of our amazing salt scrub. And there's also instruction there and education. She's got a fantastic breast lymphatic care webinar that we've got on special this month too. Also, there's so many amazing things to connect to. We have an episode of the podcast that is releasing today, I think. That is the first part of a class that DeAnna gave about how to care for tissue following breast tissue removal regarding specifically breast cancer work. So that is going to be available in the podcast, My Body, Ask Anything. So please take a look for that in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you pod. It's free and it's some amazing information. Okay, I think I've talked enough. So DeAnna, how are you?
I'm doing really great. And I'm excited every year about this month because, everybody has breast tissue. Everybody has an areola around their nipples. Some people have more nipples than others. And some people have less nipples or areolas than others because we are born in different ways, but we go through life journeys. And some people choose to have a top surgery and change the way this tissue looks and feels and represents for them. And others have to make very hard, challenging decisions that it would be better if they released that breast tissue so that nothing was growing in it or affecting the rest of their body. And so they have some bigger decisions to make within their health. But yes, we are designed identical other than the amount of hormones or moving through this tissue. And the mammary glands and milk ducts, which are a little more specific to women. So it takes a little more involvement and a little bit more can get clogged up or a little bit more can happen in this breast tissue. And the size of the breast, if we're going to talk about, humans with breasts for a moment and who are defined in that way, the size of your breast does not matter in your stagnation or complications or your ability to have cells migrate or for something to become cancerous. So we want to be checking our breast tissue, no matter size, and really learning how to do that. And then same with people who identify with having a chest. And chest tissue, people think, well, there's nothing there, so like, why check? And you can still pick up tissue. You know, I've got very little tissue on my wrist, but guess what? I can still pick up a little bit of it. I can still roll it around. I can still check it out. And actually, that's just a benefit of being able to check easier because everything's right there with less tissue. And so, you know, we really do want to be checking and assessing. And there's something else that we all have in common in this space, which is our anahata, our heart chakra, and our primary lymphatic drain. So our river, our lymph river, our immunity river, it's called the river of life, meets the blood stream. Our river meets our stream right here below the clavicle, at the heart, at the chest, at the breast. And we have our thymus gland hanging right here in our remembering. Every time that lymph, that river meets that bloodstream, it vibrates the thymus, the gland of our innate knowing. Everything we've digested, everything we've had to process, assimilate, absorb, foreign invaders, viruses, infections, bacterias, and all the good stuff too. Experiences and things that made you feel good and pleasure. So pleasures and pains and anything you've had to figure out as a system, as a body, a wholeness. Your thymus gland is holding that innate knowing. And every time we move our lymph and we move our blood, we are going through a process of remembering our wisdom and who we are and what we've experienced. And that's really precious when I think about, like, why move the lymph? It's your immune system. We all want healthy immunity. So we want healthy lymph systems. You know, we don't want to create tumors or make cancer cells. So we got to keep our immune system helping us to not do that. And that means that river needs to be flowing and moving and vibrant and full of water. And that way it's got flow all of its own. And this is really the beginning of this, you know, conversation of, like, how do we take care of our breast and our chest tissue? And let me just also make a mention, and before we really get into the questions of breast care, I believe Andrea has a specific question that came through, and we want to keep honoring, even if we have a focus today, we want to keep honoring those questions that are coming through, and there was a good one, so we're going to make sure we answer it. And it'll give you a moment to start being like, breast care, chest care, lymphatic care, cancer care. What are the questions you want to ask me today? But I want to make one more mention of what Andrea said is coming out, I think today or tomorrow, we'll see, but this beautiful, it's called Flatties, right? Because that is what is being identified as people who have had to have a mastectomy or a double mastectomy. And that's the honoring, empowering concept. It's a webinar I did specifically for people going through lymphedema, swelling of their arm from having lymph nodes or their breast tissue removed. And just, what do you do for the scars left behind? And what I want to make mention of is, as much as it was, that class is designed for cancer recovery and prevention and what to do with scars, if you've had top surgery and chosen top surgery, because really it's the same thing, different reasons, different background, same surgery. But if you've had top surgery, you also maybe want to gather some information from that webinar. And I am looking for somebody, maybe my dear friend Leo will help me out, but I am looking for somebody who maybe we just even do a little mini, who has had top surgery and who wants to learn how to take care of their chest tissue after surgery, because there's a lot of things that come up around scarring and breaking up the scars. So you have breathability of your nerves and flow of your lymph, but it's also about smoothing it out and making it look the way you want to. And that's the beauty of a gua sha, is it sculpts you into kind of the best you can be. It is a sculpting, tissue malleability, so you can tenderize little bits that are really hard and you don't like that they're chunky, and you can slough fluid out of areas that maybe are puffy at the end of a scar. There's all kinds of complications that happen with surgery in general and the scarring after. And so there's a lot of great tidbits in there for anyone who has chosen or needed to alter the way they look in the top part of their body, around their truth, around their heart, around their innate knowing and their memory of their true memory of their self. So that's all the stuff going on just right here. So I don't just have areolas and nipples. And for me, I have, breasts, but, I don't just have that. I have my thymus gland. I have my heart chakra connected to the thymus gland. I have my lymph drain, and we are just full of lymph that runs all the way through to the armpit, down into this breast tissue, and then drains also here. So it moves these directions. And these are the primary areas where people get complication, is from this armpit down into the nipple there. And the reason for that is because there's also a lot of muscle there called your pectoral muscle. And so there's muscular and there's more fiber, and, we hold and we use that part of our body, and it just makes it the most complicated channel that we could possibly talk about today. And we'll go from there. But you can see I'm excited because I'm telling you, when I started really venturing out and not just moving lymph, but starting to really get into people's chest tissue, and it all started with people having breast cancer that came to me, men and women, and just knowing what those tumors or what that feels like. And it feels so different than the lymph and other parts of the tissue. So the more you know your tissue, the more you know if something doesn't feel right. And that's early prevention. So I feel very, very, very grateful, but honored and proud of myself, to be honest, for digging in and figuring things out through people helping me and having experiences that were diagnosed, and being able to really find tiny little things that were not right, and they weren't even stage 1 yet. And guess what? That means you found it early detection, and it's really not as much of a big deal. And you also can learn how to, realize that you've got a little radar there, that your body knows how to make cancer cells, and you can live a long life taking care of yourself with that in mind. So the hardest thing about breast tissue is not avoiding it, because we avoid it because we don't know what's right or wrong. We avoid it because we kind of don't want to know, but you don't want to wait too long, or, you'll wish you knew maybe a little sooner. So we got to be brave here. We got to be empowered. We got to be strong. We got to be brave. We got to be willing to investigate and say, I'm gonna know something's wrong if I'm checking my breasts on the regular. I'm gonna know if something is not right. And again, for somebody who identifies with the chest, it's just gonna be easier to find stuff. So the more and it's gonna be a quicker exam, quicker check. So that's just a little bit more in your favor, but you still want to get in there and check it out. Yeah. So.
Absolutely right. So there's going to be a lot to talk about. I'm particularly interested in linking what you eat with breast health. And I know you're going to approach that in a little bit too. Before we get into that, yes, we do want to honor the questions that come through. And we did have a question come through from Amber. Amber says they are 29 years old, never had an ear infection in their life before they moved to Los Angeles from New York last year.
Okay.
Since then, Amber's had 3. They said they're trying to wait to take antibiotics since the second one they were able to get through without them. But any idea what could be causing this, and any tips for care during an active infection, as well as preventative tips? And she thanks you.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting because ear infections are first off usually more active on the East Coast versus the West Coast. I'm just going to be honest for what I notice. I don't have statistics there, but I'm just going to tell you off of what I've recognized because of the moisture and humidity. So usually there's more ear infections where there's more humidity. So I find it interesting that you move to a drier place and are having ear infections. So there's two directions I would go with this. So moisture is an issue with ear infections. Let's just establish that. But I would go two directions. One is, do you live in a house that's got mold? Because if you have mold and you're not used to mold, because California has tons of it, including LA area. But if there's mold in your house or on your window seals, or if your bedroom is next to a bathroom with mold, that gets in the fiber of our pillowcase and our sheets and our blankets, and we don't smell it, we don't know it, or we get used to it. And that does get into our orifices, our eyes, our nose, our mouth, our ears when we sleep. And you could be getting mold overgrowth that is sporing and growing in your ear, and then it is causing an irritation that then makes an infection. So I would not rule out mold. And that's something where you're either going to see it or you're going to smell it, or you're going to think about how old is this house or how moist is this house? You know, how damp do any of your sheets or your pillowcase feel? You know, we get used to these things and we don't think like, oh, that's damp. I felt a dry pillowcase before and it didn't feel like that. We just get used to the moisture. So check those things out. And if it was mold, I mean, there's a couple essential oils that rock mold, that would be safe to just put right in front and right behind your ear. So just put it on your hand and rub it on the front and the back of your ear, and then just take the residue and smear it in your ears. One being fir balsam. Fir balsam would be 8 drops 2 times a day. And that could be long term and really good for mold. The other one, it's a little more strong smelling, but very effective, and it's called tagetes. It's actually Mexican marigold, Tagetes. And tagetes is really, really brilliant for mold. It's a yeast, it's great for yeast overgrowth too. And your dosage would be very different. It would be 2 drops twice a day and still smeared in the ear, same application. And you could probably do both of those and it would still be safe, you know, because fir balsam is gentle and effective, but tagetes is a little more of a kick it in. So those are the directions I would try if there was mold. I wouldn't take out, you know, like what moves mold in the body as food. So you might want to think about cilantro pesto with pumpkin seeds and olive oil and lemon, and just make a pesto that's, you know, what I call medicinal pestos. It's also what in Ayurveda we'd be calling a chutney, because a pesto and a chutney are really the same thing, just different names from different cultures. But that would be a medicinalized, you know, base for somebody who maybe has mold, because that starts draining into the gut and you need to cleanse that out and you need to get that moving through the system with an alkalizing agent, which is bitter, and that's cilantro and the lemon. You know, you could add mint in there and just make it more cooling and a little bit more cleansing, but it would change the flavor a lot, you know? So, you know, I think of those things of just like, how do we get mold out of the body? We're going to have to first off dry it out and kill it, you know, start dying off. And then you got to think about the fact that anything that got into the upper channels is draining, not just to the lungs. Let's hope it hasn't gotten to lungs. You know, you'd wonder about coughing or change of breath or can't breathe as much. That's where it would go eventually, is the bronchial tree, you know, and then down into the lungs. That's the bummer. And it can get up into the brain. I'm just got to be honest. Again, if we're going to talk about prevention, I don't want to scare anybody, but you want to, like, how foggy is your brain? Is it just isolated to your ear and you got to get it out of that canal? And how do you get this canal to drain? Well, first off, gua sha and open up your whole lower neck and this whole region. And that's going to make sure there's drainage down to the subclavian vein where that lymph again meets the bloodstream. And then the other one is you want to think about a neti pot, because the more you open up these channels both directions, the more it relaxes the eardrum, opens the eustachian tube, opens up the lymph, and creates a drainage effect. So a lot of things we could do. My guess is it's low-grade mold and it hasn't gotten too far and your ears are trying to isolate it. And that's often how we get infections, is our immune system comes to our rescue, but it can't figure it out. And then it kind of breeds a little inflammation. The only other thing I would, wonder is just if you're actually getting a lot drier. Maybe there is a lot more pollens, and there's a lot of plants in LA that are not native to LA. And then they're using everybody else's water to water them. Sorry, LA. And I do love you. But they're using a hell of a lot of water to water plants that are just really pretty from all over the world. And that means you got tons of pollens. And you also have plants that are slightly being forced to grow in a desert. And that makes them a more active pollen. So we certainly see more allergies throughout that region for that reason. And that could be another thing going on. You could have a low-grade pollen allergy that you didn't have in the plants in the back east. There's a new plant here. It could even be a native plant, and it's just a new plant to you and your liver's having a hard time addressing it. And that's histamine response. And your liver makes histamine. It's a hormone. And it goes on alert to tell you when you can't break down a protein molecule. Like pollen is a protein. It's the protein we're allergic to. And so if you have allergies, I have two really good things to tell you about. One would be lavendin, and I have that essential oil, lavendin. And lavendin it'll smell like lavender, but it's a little bit more medicinal and hepatic, meaning specific for liver. And you take 10 drops twice a day, and you put it right on your liver, which is the right side of your diaphragm. And it is an amazing antihistamine that is underutilized and pretty inexpensive, So I would say you might want to get on lavendin. It's a great cooling, anti-inflammatory nerve tonic anyway, but it'd be really interesting to give that 10 days and see, does things start calming down on an allergy level? But allergies, you would probably have some weepy eyes or a little more congestion. You might feel a little more anxious with this ear, more anxious than usual. But yeah, having a drier region with high pollen is not always easy on newcomers. And sometimes people outgrow that the longer they live in a region. A couple more seasons in LA if you're going to be staying around. It might really subside. But that's what I'd be looking at for my two options on how is that happening. Or you're in the water more and you actually have a waterlogged ear. You could have water trapped in your ear that isn't necessarily just clogging you up to notice, but it's breeding an infection. And then you would need ear candling. You can find on YouTube how to do that. But yeah, so those are the ideas I have for that question.
Excellent. All right, so let's circle back. What kinds of good tips do you have for us today around breast health to continue on that topic? And particularly, I know you've mentioned talk about yeast, talk about particular foods that are useful, and then of course, what can we do to break down the fear of getting acquainted and developing a relationship with that area?
Okay, well, The first thing I would say is knowing what a lymph node should feel like could be a really good thing to consider here. Lymph nodes are like almond shaped. They're malleable, they're soft to the touch, they're not hard, they're not big, they're not thick. They're just little soft, little cushiony little nodes. You can often feel them easily in your armpit. And if your armpit is kind of extended and mounded out and kind of thickened, you know they're matted and they're stuck in there. And lymph nodes run in three, they run in trines. So often if you get really dry or cold, things contract and you'll have like a clump of 3 lymph nodes that are clogged together. And it'll feel like a bigger mass. And those are the things that are scary. So this is just a really common thing. It's just like getting to know that we are lumpy in all of our soft tissue, whether that be our arm soft tissue, the inner thigh, the back of our butt and sacrum, our abdominal, all throughout this. Anywhere you can say has a soft tissue or like a bend in all of your joints is where all of our lymph nodes reside. So we are not really touching ourselves and we are not educated. People ask all the time, like, why don't we know about our lymph system? The stuff you're teaching is so basic and so important. Like, why do I not know this already? They're almost pissed off, like, how could I not know this? Or like, I work with some massage therapists. So they're like, how could I not know this? And I'm like, well, our lymph is in very intimate areas, the back of our knees. Imagine being kissed there, and like in our armpits and our neck and our tissue of our kind of secondary reproductive tissue, and also down in our reproductive and our inner thighs and our butt, all these beautiful spots that are very sensual and intimate and touch feels good. Our lymph moves by pleasure. So if you laugh, your lymph moves beautifully. You breathe really deeply with a good thought, it moves effortlessly. And when we don't laugh and we live in pain or we're contracted or withholding ourselves or not sure what to do with our emotions and we're not breathing into it, that river clogs up and it goes stagnant and it stops flowing and it's kind of, and then it's like, should I flow again? Oh, should I? Whereas when we're in pleasure and touching ourselves and experiencing our bodies with no shame and full on respect, like, I'm sorry, but I am allowed to touch myself wherever I want to. This is my body. And I am allowed to go anywhere I want in this terrain. And I am allowed to explore myself. I'm allowed to say, I like the way my legs are shaped. That tells me that they're doing pretty good because I like them. The places you like, your lymph is moving. The places you don't like because it's too fragile or bony or looks weak or it's excess or there's extra weight or you don't like the way it's distributed or there's a rash. What you don't like when you look in the mirror, I'm like, hello, we're not hiding from nobody or each other. What I see is what I got. And your lymph is right there from the most surface you all the way to the depths of every one of your organs. There is nowhere in your body you don't have that lymph river flowing. That's why they call it the river of life. And just the more you explore and touch yourself and know that you are going to find lumpy little lymph nodes, or if you have, more female related breasts, you need to know that there's a whole starburst around the areola, about an inch out, that is basically mammary glands. And they're little lumpy, glunky little glands too. If you look them up in a picture, you can see what they look like, and that's how they're going to feel. And the more you get to know, oh, that's a lymph node and there's no pain, and there's not one breast larger than the other breast, then you start saying, wow, okay, wait a minute, I feel good. There's no pain. There's no kind of which is when there's things clogged up. It's going to feel like more glunky and hard. You just got to get to know yourself and give yourself permission to touch and feel and explore. And I promise you, the more you do that, the quicker you're going to find something that might have gone wrong or has mutated into something that you want to know about so you can catch it early. But that's a bigger inspiration than just, I want to help you not get breast cancer. That's a directed area. And it's a very important area because there's too many people who could be keeping everything moving, and that doesn't have to be their truth, or we need more support when it is your truth. But there's a bigger picture here. There's the no shame and the body empowerment and the fact that we have lost track of this lymphatic system, which is also the immune system. We've lost track of knowing what it is and how to take care of it because it's in our intimate places. And we have, we're a couple hundred years out now of like not talking about that, even though everyone keeps trying to talk about it. But a whole lot of people are not talking about that. And that's a problem. It's an actual big issue that we are not getting into our pelvic floor and exploring. That's a whole nother beautiful webinar I have. The pelvic floor webinar is so empowering. Please, please think about that one. So many tools. And then there's this whole secondary tissue to our reproductive, the chest cavity, the chest and the breast tissue. And just what is it for us to keep ourselves connected to our pleasure, the flow of pleasure. And it's a big way that we stay out of things that pain us. I'm going to go into a different direction, kind of remembering what Andrea just said to unfold this moment. But she mentioned yeast. And really the foundations of that yeast is that we find at least 67 to 69%, I could have just said 68, but somewhere right in that realm, 67% of the women that simple research, right? Just thousands of breasts touched at the Women's Herbal Symposium have cysts. That's a very high percentage of somebody who's like, there's something larger under this nipple or in this pec muscle, versus this one. Like, why does this one bigger, harder, thicker, rubbery? And this one's not. And it's a common question, like literally 67% common. And a cyst is like an internal boil. It's a hot pocket, and that's actually what dogs get when they get little hot spots. There was a cyst underneath and it started expressing through the skin. We have cystic too. In fact, they actually have a name for it, which kind of bugs me a little bit, but it's kind of a good preventive, but there's no education. So you can't prevent without education, but they call it fibrocystic breasts. So a lot of people will go in, they'll get a exam, and then it's, they're in this position where, there's a cyst, that's present in the breast, and then or on someone's ovary or their cervix, and they're like, we'll monitor that, but it's no big deal, and it's kind of like this thing where it's like, you found pain, you found a cyst, you found something that's different than the other. But they're kind of just sitting in the like, nah, it's not a disease, so there's nothing we do for it. You need to know that those are internal boils. They're trapped inflammation. The lymph is not moving if you have inflammation trapped here. I can guarantee you it's not draining good to the main drain, and it's probably not draining well in the armpit either that meets to that drain. So we got to open up all the floodgates. We got to get all this moving. We got to open it all up. The more pain you find, because the lymph speaks in two ways, pain and fatigue. So the more pain you find, you don't want to push that pain. You don't want to hurt that pain. You do want to breathe through it, and you do want to layer yourself out of it. Am I going to have to exert myself and maybe even kind of feel it in my arms if I'm going to go to a river outside and there's a dam in the river and I need to get through that dam to make sure there's water getting further out? There's going to be a little bit of pain in there, a little bit of exerting and using of my body. I might be just even sore the next day. So that's the same thing with this river. It speaks in pain. So the more you find pain, the more you want to make sure you're just slowly, you don't go so deep that you hurt yourself with the gua sha, but you work your way through, and then you keep pumping it through the day, keep pumping it. And all of a sudden it's going to drain into the main bloodstream. And all of a sudden you're like, what pain's gone? And then you're like, let me find another little spot that maybe has a dam in the river. So we always open up the channels first, and then we start pumping. So say you do have a cyst or like pain you find, and it is sharp, but it's so common. I know there's a lot of people watching this right now. If you would just put your hands, or if you're in your car listening to me, come on now, you're in your own car, get your hands on your breasts, get your hand on your chest, and like just feel around and pick it up between your thumbs and your fingers and surround that tissue, surround that nipple, and be willing to kind of pull it up in and look around with your thumbs, and then pull that tissue down and assess it with your lower fingers, and then look at the other quadrants around. So you're going from, noon to 6 o'clock to, your 3 o'clock. Yep. You're just doing all the quadrants around, and really just let yourself assess and feel. And the more you get, and it's kind of hard, and it's like a big ball, like a rubber ball in there, those are cysts. Sometimes they're really new and liquid, and you just need to kind of pump, 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 breathe, pump, 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 breathe, pump, 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 pump it, breathe. And what happens is it's a little boil. Think of it as like a zit, and it needs to drain. Now, if you move a zit too quick and without heat, you're going to mess up your skin. Okay. You're not going to hurt your breast tissue, but you're going to affect your breast tissue. If you're like trying to just, I got to pop this thing. I tell people to pump, and they're like, it won't pop. I'm like, oh, wait a minute now. That is not what we're doing here. Or that is not healthy for your tissue. You're just slowly pumping, pumping, pumping. I just taught this to a whole group of my students, and just literally 2 days ago. And I was saying to them, like, yeah, if you have a cyst in your breast, it's like every time you go pee, you just pump, pump, pump to the pain, pump, pump, pump to the pain, pump, 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 every time you pee, every time you can think about it. And then where is it in 10 days? And it'll start being smaller and softer and malleable. And it opens up all the channels to your lymph where the cyst is. And then all of a sudden it just drains. Okay. Now, with that said, there could be somebody out there right now that is like, whoa, what if I had cancer in my breast? I don't want to drain it. This is a whole nother reason we're not checking our breasts. We think we're going to dump cancer into our body. So I just want you to know it doesn't work that way. Our bodies are smarter than that. And creating a tumor is your body trying to isolate that situation. And so it is not something that's just going to infiltrate the rest of your body. And just so you don't have to trust me, please go to the Cancer Society of America, and right on their website, I'm so happy for this. I've been doing lymph care and breast care for 30 years of my life. And like 2 or 3 years ago, they put this as the main bulletin. I hope it's still there in the forefront, but literally it was in the forefront last time I looked. And it says, moving your lymphatic system does not take cancer out into your body. So they are honoring that lymphatic massage, very gentle touch and some flow, and deeper, flowing of your lymph does not create more cancer. Now, I don't have to convince myself, because I've got thousands and thousands of clients that have gotten better and have, gotten through chemo better, radiation better, gotten through surgery better, or even got better without those things. Some people do it all natural, and that's their decision. That's not what I'm condoning here. It's choice. We got choice, and everyone has to decide what's the best way to go. But no matter what you choose, that lymph needs to move for your immunity to help you, whether it helps you from surgery or helps you through chemo or helps you through radiation or just helps you through not making any more cancer cells. This is, very important. So when I say drain that cyst, a cyst does not become cancer. Like, that's not how it works here. A cyst is a different situation, And often people will find a lump. And, I also say you got to move your lymph enough for a few days. If you find something, there's a lump. You need to work around it and open the drains and kind of get it in your fingers and make it malleable and see if you can change it. If that'll change, it is not a tumor, and that it was your lymph or a mammary gland or a milk duct. There was something that was clogged in this river of life. There was a dam in that river. But if you're working it for a couple days and you've got some warmth on it and you're really working it and the drain's open and there's no pain, nowhere, cysts hurt like crazy, you found one. They are sharp and burning. You found one when you squeeze into one, But if you found like a lump and it had no feeling, no sensation, and you really did open up all the floodgates because it's safe and it's in your favor, there's no way things would be coagulating and collecting if it had a way to flow. So you want to open that flow no matter your situation or diagnosis. But those lumps that won't change, and I mean, literally nothing shifts, it doesn't even soften, there's no sensation, those are the ones that we have to be a little more careful about and be willing to say, you know what, this isn't changing. And it doesn't feel like anything else in my breast tissue. And I don't have the same thing on the other side, on the other chest or the other breast. And I better get this checked out. And then guess what that takes me to? What do we do to check it out? So we have some amazing advanced technology. May there be one in every state or somewhere near you, but we do have one around here in Novato, California. It's worth knowing where. I know there is one, but it's called 3D imaging, and it's a highly advanced ultrasound, basically. They may describe it different, but I'm just giving you the gist. I'm super into ultrasound. I get my breast ultrasound once a year, and I can look right through the tissue. I can watch it on the monitor. I can even have them take a picture for me. And it is just a clear view of everything going on. And so I can see if there's something kind of clogged and the lymph is matted. You can see a cyst, but they can see if there's a vascular blood flow. If you do have a tumor or cancer growing, there's a vascular channel. Things don't flow without blood flow. So that's what thermography is really great at. So I like the ultrasound and the 3D imaging, and it's super advanced. I like thermography. The word thermal is the key here. It's a picture of how much heat or how much cold. You don't want to be too cold. You don't want to be too hot. Remember Goldilocks? We want to be warm. So you don't want cold spots where there's no flow and it's inert, and you don't want hot spots. And the thing thermography can do is it can show you if there's a vascular feeding to something. And there is a doctor that reads those images and sends you back your results. But I don't think any of these are perfectly accurate. There's also the mammogram. I think if you're high risk with genetics, I think if there's something that shows up in thermography, if there's something that shows up in the ultrasound, then I would do a mammogram. But I won't do a mammogram unless I have a reason. I'm not into I'm 52, so I have to check and do a mammogram every year. That's just not in my theory. It's not in my way of living. I am checking, I am switching, I'm looking at my tissue through ultrasound. If I have an issue, if anything will not change from the amount of breast checks I do with myself, which is weekly, then I would not even hesitate to be like, I haven't done thermography in a while. I'm going to get a thermal, and I'm also going to go get a mammogram. But I am trusting the ultrasound as my primary, and I have seen it to be the most accurate. So I see it as primary for sure. And I think we'll probably see it as primary even in our medical field. For what I'm hearing from all my doctor friends, we'll be seeing it being probably considered more accurate than a mammogram. But that's just what I'm hearing, you know, in the doctor scene. That's just what I'm hearing from my doc friends, you know, and that's really nice to know. Its accuracy is pretty amazing. So these are the things we have available. We have our hands, we have our knowledge, right? We can be checking each other too. You know, you can do some comparison and check each other, you know, and then we also have the thermography, and they're everywhere, all over America. And then you've got your 3D image ultrasounds, which you can get an ultrasound right through your gynecologist if you can't find 3D imaging. Every gynecology office has an ultrasound because they check babies and they check lumps and they check things. So it's not hard to get, and it's covered on insurance. But most gynecologists, and I think the 3D imaging, they just lowered their prices. Can you believe that? They lowered their prices by almost $100 to make sure that it was more accessible to all people. I'm sorry, but I just find that brilliant. I rarely hear of something medical that is lowering their prices so that people have access. So that's really touching my heart. That's only Novato, so I don't know about other people. But if you are in this region, you know, it's a great thing to know. I think it's like $165 or something. I think before I knew of them and went to a gynecologist, and it was $150. So even out of pocket, you know, that's not that much, you know, a couple meals out in Sonoma County for my breast health. There we go. But yeah, so these are kind of the ways I detect and check, and hopefully I'm empowering to just, like, the more you know, the more you would know. And no, you're not going to know right off. You're going to have to make change. You're going to have to make those things that hurt be less painful. You're going to have to do some drainage and find something and trust that you're allowed to move it, you know, and that is a really beautifully powerful thing. I was very underground in this work. I am 30 years in. I'm 33 years into lymphatic care. But 30 years ago, I started checking pelvic floor and inner thigh and lower abdominal around the pubis bone and breasts and chests on all my clients. I was very young. You know, I mean, literally I was 20 years old, but I was already a massage therapist. And I just was like, why are we avoiding these areas if we have complete professionalism? And if there's full respect, and if I keep my client, you know, safe, why would I not be checking this when these are the areas that are full of lymph? Like, why would I not check a breast when that's where the lymph is? And I just had really, I'm lucky I had clients who were like, yeah, DeAnna, you get in there, you know, and then some of them had some interesting things happen. And then I learned through them. And then I started saying, this doesn't feel right. I have felt enough breasts now, you know, that this doesn't feel right. And let's get you to your doc and check it out. And then it was something. And you know, like the person I'm thinking of, they're still my client. And that could have gone way too far and they could not even be on the planet anymore. But they're actually still my client this many years later, you know, and that's pretty powerful. Same thing with the symposium, you know, it's the young ones where I find a tiny little baby, you know, I didn't know how to tell this 21-year-old that I found something and I just couldn't find the words, my head and my heart, you know, I believe in that head and heart, I speak in between. I couldn't scare this young girl on the table. I knew I had to tell her by the end of the symposium before she went home, but I could not tell her. She was just like loving the education and loving that she was getting her. She was so empowered. And I was like, I can't take this breast check empowerment away from her. but I knew I had to find the words and tell her that there was a concern. And I'm so glad I did that, because she is alive and well and knows how to take care of herself. And it was, little, and she had a tiny little bit of breast cancer that was forming in her breast. And that makes me feel good when I think of a 21-year-old being able to live a whole healthy life.
Yeah, I wonder if you might repeat the name of that imaging clinic in Novato that you recommend.
3D imaging. Yeah, 3D imaging. And you'll find it right in Novato, California. Do you see it there on your search? And I don't know what the technology, we might want to call them, what is the technology called that somebody else, I don't know if that is kind of the name of it, or if that's the name of this clinic specifically. I just looked it up 2 days ago, so I know we can search it.
We'll get the contact information and I will put it in the description.
That's great. Thank you so much.
And we've just got a little longer with you today, DeAnna. So I wonder
Yes.
if you wanted to wrap up with any additional information.
I want to take a moment to really just discuss 2 types of cancer tumors and lumps, and just like what might those feel like, just so that, I don't want to scare anyone, but I want you to be well educated. So, you're trying first to see what can change and start softening or shift in pain. The thing with, cancer tumors is they don't have a lot of sensation. So they feel very different than any other tissue. You don't know that until you find one, and let's hope you don't. But they do feel very different. So it's, thicker and very inert and hard. And another type would be very rocky and pumice stone and irregular and gravelly and like hard as a rock. And so those really are considered the hard as a rock, gravelly pumice stone little chunkies, that start tiny and then they grow from there. So it can feel like a grain of sand, and then it starts accumulating from there. But those are a little bit more aggressive, and you want to take care of them and get that dealt with right away. And I hope it's a calcium deposit, because you could get a calcium deposit trapped in your tissue anywhere in your body. And so it could be calcium, but that would be like, don't mess around. And then the other one is kind of like a inert, hard, thick rubber ball, and it's different than a lymph node. It's the different shape of a lymph node. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere where lymph is kind of connected to a channel, and they start tiny again, and they're slow growing. But that doesn't mean you want it to be sitting around in your body and growing too big. And those are the ones where sometimes they'll grow the size of a fist. And I find it and I'm like, whoa. And I'm thinking to myself, whoa, wouldn't this woman know that there's like a rubber ball, a tumor the size of her fist in her breast? And like they're even different size. And, my rightful mind is kind of like, how would you not know? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, that's literally how little women are touching themselves and exploring themselves, that they haven't even touched their breast to know. That's kind of a sad thing, right? Or they know. Like I've had where some women, they come to symposium and I'm like, okay, how do I find my words? Don't want to scare them, but I am going to be an advocate for them, because that doesn't feel right to me. And I want to help them get help. It's beyond me. So that we got to get them to the ultrasound and connected to their doctor. But it puts me on awareness, and, and then I start chatting with them and did you know? And they're like, I do know. And sometimes I work on it, but I don't know what to do. And it usually comes down to like, they have a life and they have children and they have a family, and they just really can't face that. Like there could be something going on. They just can't. put their life on the line. And it's unfortunate because I have to respectfully and honor, and wait until we know if it's true or not. But I have to be a little bit of the realist who's like, you want to be around for this family, for this job, for this partner. You want to be around for them. And that means you need to know and they need to know. And you need support. And we got to work on it. And we got to help you stay if you want to stay. And to be honest, not everybody wants to stay. And some people, they know it's their time and they choose to go. And that's not a bad thing either, but if you want to stay, you've got to look and you've got to detect and you've got to find and you got to face. And that means support. You'll need support to do that. So, just wanting to help you to kind of be like, whoa, this is like some really hard rock inside me. Nothing feels like that, unless it's calcium. And you'd want to get on it pretty quickly. But yeah, that would be just the beginning. I'm so scratching the surface. Ha, 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 ha. I'm so scratching the surface of breast and chest tissue right now, and the topic of cancer. But I think we're at least starting a healthy parameter to be able to just start touching yourself and get into your pleasure body and really see what you can do to change this river. Make sure you have your life, Yeah. So I really hope this has helped everyone today. And I just want to link this into food. This is like alkaline diet. This is the need for bitters, and it's also intestinal cleanse. And by the way, that whole picture right there would put you in a cleanse, going raw, alkaline fermentation, doing a lot of bitters and intestinal clearing, whether that be a colonic or an enema, or even taking a whole bunch of calm magnesium and doing a purgative. But this is the time of year for it. We are in fall and we are meant to cleanse in fall and spring. So this is a great time to bring in a cleanse. Look up my cleanse because I have a really easy cleanse to follow, and get into food, which is why Mary Sheila and I start our Edible Ayurveda course next Friday. And it is a self, you can do it on your own. It is the most stable class I have. I mean, I love my classes. I love my handouts, but what Mary Sheila and I have put together as a foundations and an understanding of food and how to make it yummy and tasty and pleasure related and lymphatically safe and healthy, I highly suggest. And we teach it once a year, so I'd get on it. And I believe there's an early bird until Sunday. So it would also be something you want to look at right away and maybe just like take the plunge and be like, I'm going to submerge. It's only 5 Fridays and they're not even in a row. And then you can choose if you want to continue with us. And then there's another 5 Fridays that are in January, February. But it's an easy to do course, but man, is it food related and food empowered and yummy, but great body of education. And that's a whole nother way we take care of our lymph and keep cancer at bay, is by looking at what we put in our body. Food is the primary medicine. So yeah.
We can continue this conversation tomorrow morning because you're going to be live on Facebook with Mary Sheila at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. So all you have to do to access that is to join the free Edible Ayurveda Facebook group. I'll put a link in the chat. Otherwise, just go onto Facebook and search for Edible Ayurveda, and that group is right there for you.
Yeah.
So
it's a cooking demo. So like we are going to do little 30 minutes. You'll be amazed what Mary Sheila and I can make in 30 minutes, but it'll also be about liver and malic acid. And that's my hint to the food of tomorrow. But it's a food that you may not realize is so liver cleansing. Yeah.
I have a feeling I'm going to find some new recipes tomorrow.
I hope so.
That's fantastic. The time goes by so fast, but I know you've got another client to tend to. So I want to wrap this up. Thank you so much for all of the wisdom that you've given. And thank you for watching today. If you like what you saw, please feel free to give that a thumbs up and subscribe to find out whenever we go live, which is every other Thursday. And as I mentioned at the top of the live stream, we've got a podcast. Take a look at our website. You can find lots of good tools for self-care for your entire lymphatic system and particularly your breast tissue. And also find us on Instagram and Facebook as well. So thanks so much. Submit your questions online on our website or send email to us. And we'll talk to you next time. Take care.
Thank you all. I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Hadi Om.